color me crazy, but let's check out the stats that indicate the Cowboys can definitely win this ball game. And with the Big 12 being more bipolar than my ex, we somehow still find ourselves right in the thick of this Big 12 crazy title race.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Alldale State. Today, we're partially brought to you by Game Time Tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Get with a Game Time today to get the best tickets in the game. If you're going to go check out the Cowboys versus the West Virginia Mountaineers in Stillwater, you're likely not to be alone. I don't want to necessarily say that all eyeballs will be on Stillwater, but all Big 12 eyeballs will be on Stillwater because most at the top have the bye week. The Cowboys and the West Virginia Mountaineers will set a precedence for how this Big 12 title race is going to shake out because currently, yes, things are not looking very great in Stillwater, Oklahoma, especially from an offensive perspective. But Bryan Nardo's got deficiencies too, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show. This bipolar Big 12, first of all, thank you for the absolute craziness. But the Big 12 title picture we thought was kind of narrowing itself into a tighter picture. That is not the case. The Cowboys currently sit at 13th place in the Big 12, but that doesn't really tell the entire story. What does tell the entire story is the fact that you have all these ties. And this will be a weekend where we can separate one of those ties, those being Oklahoma State, West Virginia. There's a three-way tie for first in the Big 12. There's a three-way tie for second place in the Big 12. There's a five-way tie for third place in the Big 12. Then you have fourth place, then you have fifth place, and we're right there in the thick of that. So technically, whether you're tied for fifth or sixth place, that is going to make a determination on the Big 12 race. And the determination is going to be made this weekend. Because likely, maybe not always, because this conference is crazy, but likely the loser of Oklahoma State, West Virginia, is now playing for a bowl game. Now, if that's the case, and we are looking more towards the future, that's almost kind of a midseason rebuild mode. We are not quite there yet. We will discuss some of those potential possibilities. But as it sits right now, this is a very winnable ball game. And if you do win this ball game, then you catapult yourself up into the territory of the 5, 6, 7-way tie for third place. Then you keep yourself alive. Then you might need a couple games to go your way from opposing teams in the Big 12, but you do put yourself in a position. If you win this game, I think both teams are unfortunately looking at a situation where the remainder of the season's not going to go the way they wanted at the beginning of the season. These are two teams that had high expectations. You could say the Cowboys had higher expectations. That would be reasonable. We were a 10-win ball club, returning 90% of our roster. They're a 9-win ball club, returning like 80-ish, 85% of their roster. So we were both going to be in a position preseason to have a run at a Big 12 title. But now we both find ourselves in pretty much a do-or-die situation. Again, if you were to tell everybody at the beginning of the season we might lose to Utah and Kansas State, a lot of people would probably said, okay, I get it, but we're good enough to win every other ball game. This stretch of Utah, Kansas State, and West Virginia was going to be the most difficult, even when the schedules came out. Now, there are teams at the back end that look significantly better. There's teams that were at the forefront of the conference that look significantly diminished from what they were last season. Oklahoma State was obviously in that territory. But as it pertains to the Cowboys versus the Mountaineers, if you look at the Big 12 statistics, I think that there's a lot of things that we can do to win this ball game. So if you look at the team points offensively, Oklahoma State is still fourth in the Big 12. West Virginia is eighth. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. Defensively, the Cowboys are down towards the bottom, ranked 13th in the conference, but West Virginia is worse at 14th in the conference. If you go over to some of the totals, you're going to see much of the same thing. Offensively, the Cowboys are 6th in the conference. West Virginia is 9th in the conference. Defensively, the Cowboys are dead last, but West Virginia is right next to us above Tech at number 14. Then you look at over some of the defensive classifications because Bryan Nardo's defense has been problematic. If you go for sacks against, of course, Oklahoma State is number 1 in the country because we've only given up 1 sack throughout the entirety of the season. So, again, pass pro has not been that bad for the Cowboys. Down at the bottom, 13th in the Big 12 is West Virginia. So they do give up a decent amount of sacks. They're 1 sack away from double digits, which is obviously a massive issue. Sacks by. The Cowboys don't get to the quarterback all that often. The defensive line not getting to the quarterback has been one of the biggest issues with the guys in the back end. But even though we're 9th in the conference at getting sacks, they're worse. They're 11th in the conference at getting sacks. So our number 1 ranked pass pro O-line has to go up their 11th ranked defensive line when it comes to sacks. Interceptions. Cowboys are 4th in the conference. West Virginia is dead last. So they don't get a whole lot of picks. Forced fumbles. Cowboys 10th in the conference. West Virginia 14th in the conference. No matter what metric you continue to look at, there's a lot of areas that Oklahoma State exceeds West Virginia in. Whenever you look at some of the opponent first downs, we're pretty bad at it. We give up quite a bit. We're 14th in the conference. They're worse. They're dead last in the conference in giving up first downs. When it comes down to the third down conversion rate, offensively, we're not great. We're 11th in the Big 12, but they're worse, 14th in the Big 12. Opponents' third down percentage. We all know we're really good at that. We're number 4 in the conference. They're number 9 in the conference. When it comes down to the opponent's fourth down conversion rates, we're allowing teams to the clip of being 7th in the conference. They're 10th in the conference. So although Oklahoma State is in a position where they're kind of reeling, and West Virginia is in a position where they're kind of, peaking, not necessarily at the right time, but maybe at this time, we are currently on 2 different paths. We're going down one road that's not great. They're going down the road that seems to be positively uplifting. So this could be a derailment of the season for West Virginia, just like it could be the lily pad or launching pad, whatever you want to say, to get Oklahoma State back in contention of the Big 12 title. Because sitting at 13th, it's not great. But really, when you're actually tied for 5th or 6th, that's a different story. Now, we are in a position that we do need a couple things to happen to swing our way. I don't know that we're necessarily quite to the area of we need teams to absolutely must win. But you've got Houston going to TCU. I don't see Houston pulling that off. That's okay. Keeps TCU up in the 2nd, 3rd place kind of race. Obviously, we have to take care of business. I don't see Baylor being able to hang with Iowa State, especially in Ames, Iowa. So Iowa State seems to be taking that mantle up at the 1st place category as well. You got UCF, Florida. We'll talk about that when we do our picks later. KU at Arizona State. Arizona State is 1 win above us in the Big 12. We're 0-2. They're 0-1. So if KU can finally get themselves together and find some semblance of a football team, they could help us out here. But we do get to play Arizona State later in the season, so it could kind of narrow that window. And to some degree, you'd almost want to see a ranked Arizona State coming into Stillwater for homecoming. But if KU wins, it does bump us up a notch if we win as well. Then you have Texas Tech at Arizona. Texas Tech is actually up at the top right now. Arizona looks way better than they did against Kansas State, just like Kansas State looked way better against us than they did previously, right? So their performance against BYU and their performance against us, just like our performance against Arkansas in the second half and our performance in the first half against Utah, is kind of the storyline. And that jives with how the season has gone. We're early on to this thing, but there's not a clear separation for the teams that are going to be fighting for the top spot. I think a lot of us, I assumed UCF's running attack was going to be able to rush them towards the top of the leaderboard more often than not, but they somewhat got exposed. And Colorado, a team that seemingly had so many locker room issues and they didn't know how to distinguish whether they're going to go right or left, all of a sudden, they look like not only a competent football team, but a confident offensive football team. So there's a lot of things that could end up being problematic in this schedule. But as it sits right now, being tied in a 3-4-way tie for 6th place, that just means you're 1 win away from being right there in the middle of it. And if you're in the middle, in the Big 12, you're in the thick of the race. There could be some crazy things happening. Some teams at the very bottom find their way creeping up towards the top. But this is almost a separation day. And just like a lot of us don't have a lot of faith in KU getting it done, I don't think anybody has a lot of faith in Baylor getting it done. Therefore, everybody in the conference is going to be paying attention to Oklahoma State, West Virginia. one of these teams is likely about to remove themselves from contention. Again, crazy stuff has happened in this conference. So it's not, an inevitability that the next loss is the loss that puts you out of it. But it seems unlikely that the cannibalistic nature of the conference is going to avoid everybody. We're in the lower tier of teams that need to find a way to avoid that. Only time shall tell. But if you're thinking about getting tickets, get them in time with Game Time. No matter if you're looking at sports, music, comedy, theater, Game Time tickets is the bee's knees, the best in the game, and the thing that you need to get squared away. We all know that the travel, the hotels, the rental cars, all of that craziness is not fun, and it doesn't make an experience better when you're trying to travel. Game Time is here to help that experience and make life easier for you. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Pick that makes it easier to get tickets for your favorite live events, easier than ever. Game Time Picks is going to filter out all the crazy ridiculousness you don't need and show you the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to search hours and hours and thousands of tickets. Game Time is here for you. The Game Time Pick makes it easier for you to save more on not just sports, but again, also concerts, music, theater, and more. The all-in pricing must be the best in the game because they allow you to get 110% back of the difference with the lowest price guarantee, and the ticket coverage from Game Time means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You need to take the guesswork out of buying tickets today with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Make sure you create that account and redeem that code. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today because you already know what time it is. It's game time. The Oklahoma State Cowboys are not in rebuild mode, and maybe one more loss doesn't even necessarily quantify it as a rebuilding situation. I would say that another loss likely does catapult us into a different trajectory on the year. And since everybody with eyeballs knows that this Alan Bowman situation is not working out, and a lot of people do think that because of their eyeballs, Garrett Rangel is not going to be the answer. I somewhat would like to see an area to disagree there, and that would be to get him a full week with the ones now. But the Zane train cannot start yet because of a slight foot injury. Doesn't appear as though something that's going to keep him out long term. So after this game, we have a bye week, then things change. But that allows us to explore the conversation of if we don't have a hope of winning the Big 12 title, which means obviously the CFP picture is long gone behind us. We're somewhat out of CFP contention technically, unless we win the Big 12 conference. And I will admit that if you win the Big 12 conference now that we don't necessarily have a juggernaut style of team at the moment, it does position us to be potentially a 5-9 seed, which means we get to host. Okay. So we're keeping hope alive here. But if that hope were to diminish, because we've already lost Colin Oliver, yeah, he could make an emergence here in the next month and a half or so. But Nick Martin goes out with an injury. Haven't heard about the MRI results, so I don't know where we stand on that one. I do know that we're having some problematic things start to pop up, not only defensively, but offensively as well. So if we end up in a rebuild mode, I think most of us would be in agreement that we need to see the new age of Cowboys that are going to be representing us next season. I understand bringing back 34, 35, 6-ish seniors was supposed to be monumentally important for the building blocks of this team. But all of those returning senior leaders don't seem to be guiding us or leading us or finding a way to regalvanize the locker room independently of whatever position group you are or not a part of. So if they can't get it done, or no, that's fair to say, actually. They can't get it done because it hasn't been getting done. right? We've seen much more Talon Shetron than Rashad Owens because Talon Shetron clearly has more capabilities than Rashad. Not a knock on Rashad. Rashad is a phenomenal possessions wide receiver, but Talon does more. Now, you can't really remove DeJon Stribling because he's absolutely killing it and is going to be one of the Cowboys that deservingly should be on some of the award watch list still, as the same can be said for Brennan Presley. So I understand not seeing a whole lot of Io Shotomide King. He did get a nice grab the other day. That was amazing to see. I don't like him being the number 2 here, honestly, because that means we're just taking some of his redshirt capabilities away. So maybe give us some more Cale Cabanis. He's a senior. He's got some grabs. He's earned his moments. He's been able to bide his time. We know that he probably would put forth maximum effort no matter what. And Gavin Freeman, hasn't necessarily been able to break loose yet. And I know that DeJuan Lofton is still unavailable. So give us the redshirt freshman, Rashawn Woods, Enid High School product, Tyke Andrews. Give us some more of that 85 action. Isaiah Glass, Dalton Cooper. I don't know if they're going to end up doing enough, right? But if Dalton Cooper is not going to be able to do enough, and we know we can get Isaiah Glass back next season, then let Isaiah run with the daggone thing. And you go to the other side of the ball. Jake Springfield, whether he's in, whether he's out, whether it's him, whether there's a rotation, okay, cool. Noah McKinney's only redshirt sophomore. Give us the UNLV product because I would bet he's nastier, meaner, and uglier on the football field than Jake Springfield. Preston Wilson hasn't been cutting it. Cole Birmingham definitely hasn't been cutting it. We've seen Taylor Materko in the past, and we didn't necessarily love what we saw out of Taylor Materko, but bring it on. Give us some Taylor Materko as long as he's going to be dirtier, nastier, more ruthless, more vicious on the football field. I don't have any issues with Joe Michalski, so I can't really say a whole lot there. Tight end. Right, Tyler Foster, unfortunately, has been very underwhelming. I also thought that there was going to be a possibility of him replicating what Josiah Johnson was able to do, but he's not. And it just makes me realize that we didn't utilize Josiah Johnson near enough last season when we did have him. And then Quentin Stewart, obviously, he's kind of your senior blocking kind of guy. We've seen a lot of Josh Ford. Give us more of Josh Ford. Make him instrumental in the route trees. If we're going to see him develop out of our very own eyeballs early on, let's get it going. And we know about the little injury to Zane, right? So whatever the propensity is to stick with Alan Bowman, if we can find a way to squash it, give us some Garrett Rangel. If that doesn't work, then we have a bye week. Then we could potentially have the conversation of seeing what the Zane train looks like. But we all know, we can see the Alan Bowman show is not going to be enough to get us back into contention. And if he is, great. But if he isn't, then we need to see what we're having next year. And also, if you keep sticking with all these seniors that are leaving any daggone ways and they're not producing and you don't play the younger cats, they might transfer. Because, I mean, we convinced everybody to come back this year and it's been a disaster. The young kids see that too, right? We've seen a decent amount of Sessi. I don't think we've seen enough of Trent. I do know that the objective is to redshirt him. But, okay, fine. Then give us some Rodney Fields action. Jake Schultz, love the dude, right? Love his big grab. Love his hustle. Love his intensity. He is miles away behind what we had in Braden Cassidy. I don't know that Luke McIndoe's a whole heck of a lot better. So maybe give us some Punk, City, Cook, and Bryce Drummond action. Athletically, we know that Bryce Drummond can do some things that Schultz and McIndoe cannot do. And yeah, Schultz just doesn't seem to have the same capability or the willingness to do some of the things that number 90 was able to do for us. Amon Oates, not bad. Give us some more of it because Xavier Ross, he's a redshirt senior, so he's gone no matter what. Colin Clay, a redshirt senior. I've been pretty happy with Colin Clay's play this season. I've been pretty underwhelmed with Justin Kirkland's play this season. So give us some Aiden Kelly. Right? Give us some more of the double entendre of Deshaun Brown and Jaleel Johnson. Heck, if Obi Ezegbo needs a breather, give us some Puasa Utu. We saw a little bit of Kenneth Harris. Give us some more Kenneth Harris. Give us some Raymond Gay II action. Trey Rucker looks good. Parker Robertson looked great in relief. Give us some more of Parker Robertson. You can tell that kid is dying to be on the field and is willing to do whatever is necessary to get something done. Cam Epps hasn't been bad. Kobe Hilton hasn't been bad. Cam Smith has been pretty good. Well, give us some Kale Smith action. Dylan Smith and Lyric Rawls, I like it. But maybe we can up the ante a little bit more here, right? Let's see what Lando Cleveland can do. Let's see what David Kabongo can do. Let's see what Gunnar Wilson can do on special teams. Give us some Ike Essenwoon. Is Ike Essenwoon going to mess up sometimes? 100%. But is he going to go 33,000 miles an hour and not bat an eye about it and dive, fly, and do whatever? Yes. That's kind of what my we haven't talked keys to victory or anything, but reckless abandon. Like, just let this game fly. You literally have nothing to lose, because if you lose, then we need to see the future. This is the last game for us to stick to the idea of still winning a Big 12 title as a possibility, still making a CFP if we win the Big 12 title. It's definitely a possibility, but you got to win this ball game. Thankfully, statistically, the areas that we're concerned about as Cowboy fans, West Virginia is behind us on. So most of the areas that we find problematic, West Virginia is more problematic in those areas. So there are going to be some things that we should be able to exploit to win this ball game. But if we don't, could we all not agree that it's time to move on to the youth? Tip your cap to the 35-ish, whatever, seniors that came back. Love you. Thank you. It didn't work out. Maybe it's not your fault, because the coaching has been pretty atrocious all the way across the board. But you coming back for your 5th, 6th, 7th year, just, it didn't work. Maybe you got too comfy. Maybe you got too soft. Maybe you got too old, too brittle, too frail. Wow, we don't know. But we do know that the product on the field doesn't look anything like last season. And last season, we were riding the struggle bus at the beginning of the year. Here we are mid-season, and we're not only riding the struggle bus, we're almost driving the daggone thing. This is a game to get out of the struggle bus territory, and we both need it. Who needs it more, O State or West Virginia? I don't know. I feel like we do, because we had this grand plan of actually being able to win the Big 12 title. Not like we've got the talent to maybe get up there. We were banking on it. Or at least most of us, a decent amount of us, enough of us to be so frustrated and irritated that if we cannot catapult ourselves back into this title contention, which is possible, that we just rebuild now. There's no point in rebuilding in the offseason if we know we're in a rebuild now, and we know we got 30 some odd seniors that just aren't quite cutting it. It is what it is. I said what I said. So hopefully we can get on the right track. And also, hopefully you too can get on the right track monetarily with the best in the land. It is FanDuel, and you need to get rocking and rolling with it today. It's time to make the money, honey. And FanDuel is the best, not just for fun, but they are number one in sports book betting for a reason. We're watching some Cowboys kickstart their NFL careers or make their NFL careers even bigger, which is a big time for you to get a big return from FanDuel. If you get that tingling sensation that a former Cowboy or maybe just your favorite player in general is about to bust out and have a big one, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets from. You can get started with $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Place your first $5 bet to get that $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed today with FanDuel.com. Make sure you hit FanDuel.com today. Here on Hammer the Over Country, we might still hammer the over on something, right? On something. All righty, y'all. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit here to Bryan Nardo's defense. Statistically, it looks really bad. On the field, it hasn't looked very good. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. But other than just the obvious, right, if you're on the field for 75, 85% of the ball game, your dudes are not going to get enough rest to be able to maintain their health throughout the entirety of the season. Now, you always talk about depth because it is imperative to have some if you're going to make any sort of title run. Typically, though, you start having these bumps and bruises and extra little, ankle tapage and extra time in the sauna, extra time in the cold tub. You got to report a little bit early to get taped up a little bit more. That stuff usually starts happening around week 9, not around week 5. So for the statistical categories that Bryan Nardo's deficiencies have been glaringly obvious, the time of possession, Oklahoma State did much better against Kansas State. But now you're starting to run into this slight injury bug situation. The injury to Colin Oliver wasn't slight, but it's manageable, which means we can manage him being back towards the end of the season. Don't know 100% about Nick Martin. We know BP's been banged up a little bit. DeJuan Lofton's out. Justin Wright is out. I don't know that there's a whole lot going on with the defensive line other than the fact that they just can't get push. But the back end is getting beat up so much that, we're having to start to let some of the freshmen that were on scout team and kind of trying to break into the 3 deep, they're getting some run now. Some legitimate run. That is equal parts good, but equal parts concerning. Like, we knew it was going to take Trey Rucker a little while coming back from a devastating knee injury. And the rehab took a little longer than anticipated, but he's good to go. Same with Trey Rucker. How can the human highlight tackling machine that is top 3 in America and total tackles and number 2 in America and solo tackles, how is that dude going to be able to keep this pace throughout the entirety of the season without some help? This is a time for the defensive line to step up somehow, some way. And again, if it's got to be an injection of young cats to make something happen, do it. If you've got to let Landon Dean use his athleticism and just let everything throw caution to the wind, then do it. If you need to get creative with your packaging or you need to go down to a solid 4-man front, if you want to do a 4-2-5, cool. A 4-3, cool. But you've got to find some kind of push because the guys in the back end are dying. And we didn't start the season with a whole lot of depth at corner. So as much as we've had frustrations with our corners and our DBs getting burnt, a decent amount of it is going to be chopped up to just health. The little bumps and bruises and nagging injuries that everybody experiences at the latter half of the season are already happening with the defense because of the number of snaps they've been playing. This is not sustainable. From a defensive perspective, if we're concerned about the numbers we have right now, if the offense can not move the ball, if for nothing else, just to let them rest occasionally, then we're going to see the 3 deep morph into a rebuild way quicker than we wanted to, right? If we lose this game, maybe we start to begin the rebuild. But the defense is starting to be put in a slightly precarious situation with numbers. This is a 3 deep that we knew would get tested later in the season, but the fact that it's being tested now is a problem. We need the offense to find a way to just sustain a couple drives here and there to give them a breather, or we're going to see the back end full of underclassmen that are not ready whatsoever. So this is a call to action for just move the ball. Okay. If you don't put up a bunch of points, whatever. We've got to find a way to keep the main dudes that we do have available throughout the course of the season. The defensive line. You got to do something. There's got to be somebody on that roster that is willing to do whatever, any point in time, anywhere, to just get in the backfield. Scrape, claw, scratch, climb, jump, whatever. There's got to be somebody other than Colin Oliver that is willing to do all that. Find that dude and please put him on the field because it's killing the back end of our defense and we're not going to be able to keep this up. Anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, podcast people out there, hit the stars, leave a review, do what you do. Apologize about the audio version not going so well. I'll fix it by adding another one.